Hello. It's Prince Easy coming at you once again. And well, pertaining to the last two videos, some of you, the keen of you, might notice that I haven't really talked about national debt and all of that, right? Public debt and all of that. Well, I think this issue is a victim of bias view, right? Biased view, because if we were to assess what we call the recovery, right? After some individuals uh, basically torpedoed world economy, right? As they're trying to do right now, right? So funding of projects gonna be a problem, right? So they either get into debt or exploit the people. Since that was not an option, then here we are. Right? And also, I left out activities over there in the Middle East, right? We shall get to that. That's the thing. You can look it up yourself. Mm? And of course, a fair use disclaimer for you who have been here around for, I don't know, a short while. I don't have those many videos in this channel, about 200 something, not even 300.
The best way to hide something is to not hide it at all. So we're in Plaza Castilla right now in Madrid, and it's really cool because people walk by this every single day, and they don't know because they don't see the hidden Masonic symbolism here. So it's actually really cool. So in the first temple period, King Solomon, David's son, he was instructed to build two columns outside the temple, Boaz and Hakim, okay? To this day, every single Masonic temple is required to have two columns outside the entrance. Now, if you're a city of consequence, you will have obelisks, right? Now, the thing you're supposed to do with obelisks is you're supposed to have them situated on top of two intersecting circles, or known as a vesica Pisces. Why? Because the vesica Pisces looks like a get, like the front end of a get, right? So it's a sex symbol. It's basically telling you this is the birth of something. Now, you have the birth of something, you have the entrance to something, right? So what is that behind this? This is the business district of Madrid. So it's telling you they're open for business. It's really cool. Another thing, very Masonic, you will see checkered patterns, black and white. So I'm going to jump as high as I can right now and show you something.
Well, he's either an operator or unaware. But there's nothing cool about this if you really knew the significance of what you are looking at. And also, I like to emphasize this, right? Because there are actually individuals out here who wanna reshape the image of this organization, right? This particular organization. And what has been happening is that they mislead people, right? They basically say that, and of course, if you know what is really going on, then this thing will become relevant, right? They say that that the Masonic order was actually established by King Solomon, right? And basically, the architect of the temple of King Solomon was the one that established this organization, right, to preserve this knowledge of actual construction, right? This is the story, right? And after construction, after wealth, they diversify their knowledge and everything. Hence, they became the Masonic order, right? So basically, they claim to be royal to the loyalty of Israel. That's their claim, right? And you can now see where all of this other nonsense come about, right? Where they talk about, okay, the Bible says it basically starts from when Christ was about 30 or something, right? It starts going into detail, and it also says that many the other side of the years before um, were mostly hidden, and here is the opportunity they saw to basically insert themselves into the picture and basically say that Christ was initiated and all of this, right? And it's the same proposition that these people have brought to my attention also, right? So yeah, not be deceived. Bathing what, right? What is so special about two individuals having sexual activities? There's nothing unusual about that, but no, something deeper and darker, right? So this guy has been getting a push, right, from the system, and that should concern people, right? I've been also getting another push from another individual, and now I'm seeing the picture now. I'm seeing, right? You can Google this. It's from some, and I think it's just a coincidence that it formed a pentagram right there. Look at this craziness. So what? Are you straight or what? They're just confused, brothers, brothers and sisters. These people are confused. Mm, of course. Why? Also, uh, disclaimer: fair use for review and criticism.
Economy. At that point, we here in Europe, we live in a democracy, right? Well, think again. For instance, here in the Netherlands, even though the entire parliament voted against participating in the CBDC, the central bank digital currency, the minister van Huffelen, this clown over here, went to the EU in Brussels and signed the agreement single-handedly, ignoring the will of both the parliament and the people. Why? Because she thinks it's important, and in her words, her opinion also counts. Also, the European Union put out a survey asking all European citizens what they think about the introduction of the CBDC. The responses were overwhelmingly negative. Everyone said, don't do it. So, what do you think the EU did? Exactly. They ignored the will of the people. And in the fourth quarter of this year, the first version of the CBDC will be released. And then, in the second quarter of next year, the Dutch NLID wallet will be launched. And this is where all your money will exist. And it will be fully programmable. That means they can control what you spend your money on. For example, they could restrict you to buying only 2 clothing items per month, in the name of fighting climate change, of course. Or they could require you to spend your savings before a certain date, otherwise your saving would vanish, just to stimulate the economy. At that point, we have no financial freedom left. Even though nobody wanted this, the people didn't want it, and the parliament voted against it, it's still happening. Is this a democracy or not? Let me know in the comments what you think.
Yeah, I think the world is finding out that the promise of democracy, which is quote unquote freedom, does not necessarily go hand in hand with what we know as order, right? They actually form a paradox. They actually form a paradox, right? Freedom and order, right? Now, they found out that freedom is not working. Now they're trying to establish order, right? And they're going to establish order by how order has been established since the fall of man: power, strength, right? Behind it, integrity. If not, then we have characters like this here. Hmm? Those who want to talk about democracy, and these people who want to teach us about democracy, please. Right? So, Another video here. Fair use disclaimer.
Reason why they use DNA from the cells of other humans and other animals in vaccines is to trigger an autoimmune reaction. Now I'm going to set this up for everybody.
I feel sick.
This is to make you aware. This is the autoimmune industry complex. Inject people without them asking or knowing DNA from other species and other humans into their body. You will wreck their immune system and create autoimmune diseases for life. Do you want to know how I know it?
No.
Real simply. Have you ever heard of a person getting an organ transplant?
Sure. Yes.
Name an organ that they like to transplant.
Kidneys.
Kidneys are a good one. Yep. Kidneys, liver, hearts, right? You get all these, right? Lungs for pulmonary fibrosis. They have lots of organs they do transplants from. When a person you've ever known gets an organ transplant, that organ is coming from another human.
Yeah.
So they're finding someone who died or has sacrificed their own organ, and they're going to put that organ inside of your body. Let's give the kidney, for example. When they do that and they wake you up from the surgery, they then immediately prescribe to you 10 to 15 drugs for life that are called anti-rejection drugs.
Okay.
Your immune system's going to reject the organ and kill it. Why? Your immune system knows it ain't yours.
Foreign, yeah.
So it's going to go attack it. After it creates antibodies that totally destroy that organ, if you weren't on those drugs, that organ that you just received from somebody else has the DNA structure of kidneys. Guess what happens after it gets done attacking that kidney? It's going to be, those antibodies are floating around your body looking for what?
Kidneys?
Kidney cells, kidney tissue. They are going to then start attacking your kidneys, and you will develop autoimmunity of your kidneys, chronic kidney failure, and you will be on dialysis for life.
Jeez.
The body, we know, will reject and destroy any tissue that's foreign that isn't your DNA. This is a great design by God, by the way. Don't put other DNA in your body.
Right.
So now you put Cocker Spaniel DNA inside of a 6-month-old. You put hepatitis B inside of a 12-hour-old baby.
Yeah.
And you set them up for autoimmune diseases lifelong. This is why you get juvenile rheumatoid arthritis, juvenile diabetes,
Yes.
SIDS. Why did you get all these conditions of autism? This is
So
what
many
they're
more
doing.
diseases, malfunction.
Yeah. We have another fair use as well.
For clarification, because as we get into this, we want people to make sure that you're not just somebody with a wacky idea.
Right.
Okay? You come with some science to you. What is the official reason for the collapse of the World Trade Center towers?
Well, we're told that the planes hit the buildings, and there was an explosion and a fire, and about an hour and a half later, in the case of the North Tower, the buildings collapsed due to structural weakening due to the fires. Mm-hmm. The problem is that we don't have large gradual deformations associated with collapses, and fires in high-rises have never brought down a steel frame high-rise building at all, ever. And what we
Emphasis on the steel frame.
have, unfortunately, is the evidence in the Twin Towers and the third skyscraper to collapse that day, which most people don't know anything about it. We have the evidence of the 10 key features of controlled demolition. In the case of Building 7, it collapses straight down into its own footprint at free fall speed in the first 100 feet. It's dropping, as you can see, symmetrically, smoothly, at free fall speed in the first 100 feet, 2.5 seconds. This is uncanny. There's 40,000 tons of structural steel designed to resist this collapse.
So what, a 47-story building?
Yeah, this is called Building 7, right? A football field away from the Twin Towers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay, so what we're showing is left what happened. In fact, right is a controlled where you are using, or the people who made this happen, used demolition.
Indeed, and this is a direct comparison. And you can see that, indeed, almost free fall speed, free fall acceleration through 40,000 tons of structural steel. That is uncanny. So we have 700 architects and engineers demanding a new investigation as a result of this evidence and the evidence in the World Trade Center that is very explosive. Almost every architect and engineer we show this information to agrees with us that these are controlled demolitions. If we can get them to look at the information, because obviously the implications of a controlled demolition are dark for our country, because that means somebody besides Al-Qaeda was involved, because these have to be easily 3 of the most highly secure buildings outside the Pentagon.
Yeah, but the deceivers out there, they'll tell you, they'll talk about the plane. They'll emphasize on the plane. right? Hmm? Well, here is the important news. Hmm? Well, for the case of these people right now, it's more like their capacity to fight is their weapon. That's their pride, the sword. Esau, the sword. If you take the sword out of his hand, then what? Nothing. Their legacy is done. So that is the next focus in order to contain this madness, right? Because it's obvious that there are people in there that should not be destroyed because it's not really their fault. So yeah, you deal with that and keep watch for any resupply. If not resupply, then you know what remains, don't you? Well, this is an attack I saw the other day, right? It hasn't gone popular, but basically two women in a bike headed for a church who had a big event, and the event apparently failed. They ended up just blowing up themselves. Yeah. So Christian attack, huh? Like I said, they play across the board, right? Even in Tanzania, it's the same situation. Even over there, they try to pull this whole situation. And what shocked me is not that this event occurred, no, but rather the reaction of the Ugandan people. They actually think that it was a false flag. That Museveni will go out of his way to put two people on a bike and to blow them up in order to prove something. I don't know. But these are the symptoms of information infiltration, right? People have the nerve to come out and spill lies. Yeah. It's nice. I guess we get to hear what they think, right? So as we can fight and counter it. So another disclaimer.
Jewish historians record old Jewish documents showing how the slave trade was so thoroughly Jewish that slave auctions throughout the Americas had to close on Jewish holidays. Brazil received far more African slaves than North America. A. Witzner, another official of the Jewish Historical Society, in his book Jews in Colonial Brazil, pages 72 and 73, wrote, quote, "The buyers who appeared at the auctions were almost always Jews, and because of their lack of competitors, they could buy slaves at low prices. If it happened that the date of such an auction fell on a Jewish holiday, the auction had to be postponed." Studying the Jewish histories of the New World, I began to learn of a carefully recorded Jewish history that you and I are not permitted to know about. I discovered that many centuries before the transatlantic slave trade, that Jews had dominated the slave trade in the entire Western world of the last 2,000 years, even as far back as Roman times. Duncan Wagnall's Jewish Encyclopedia, Volume 10, page 48, writes, quote, "The trade in slavery constituted the main source of livelihood for the Roman Jews. In the 5th century, Pope Gelasius permitted Jews to introduce slaves from Gaul into Italy on the condition that they were non-Christian. In the 8th century, Charlemagne explicitly allowed the Jews to act as intermediaries in the slave trade. In a history of the Jews from Babylonian exile..."
Well, all I'm trying to say is this. They taught many their ways, right? They have taught many their ways. And to top it off, they took the identity of the people they enslaved, right? The Israelites. Right? They never mention that name, right? Hebrew Israelite, you never hear that, don't you? Yeah. Another video, another disclaimer. Fair use for review.
When the World Economic Forum launched their social media campaign in 2018 carrying the slogan, "You'll own nothing and be happy," I thought, finally, the predatory billionaires who try to run the world had shown their hand. The public can finally see their fate if the World Economic Forum are allowed to succeed. That didn't happen. The media, who have the same owners as the World Economic Forum, persisted with calling the World Economic Forum's evil agenda a conspiracy theory. Even in this place, there are only a handful of senators with the courage to call out the agenda for what it is: economic exploitation and social control. Over the break, the World Economic Forum revealed another aspect of their plan when they launched a campaign against laundry. Yes, really, laundry. Jeans should not be washed more than once a month. Most other clothes once a week. You will wear dirty clothes and be smelly, apparently, and happy. The temptation is to laugh at their desire to control even mundane aspects of our lives, yet the truth is much more frightening than that. The World Economic Forum have now turned their evil agenda to food. The campaign against farming is really a campaign against one of the necessities of life: food. Predatory billionaires, parasitic billionaires, owning near-urban intensive production facilities, producing food-like substances for the masses, forcing the public into acceptance to the World Economic Forum's fake global warming scam. These are their own stated motives: control food, control people. Who controls the food supply controls the people. Who controls the energy can control whole continents. Who controls money can control the world. The World Economic Forum and the predatory billionaires they represent are currently trying to do all three.
Yeah. Yeah, I had to let that bike pass. So all I'm saying is be wary, right? Be wary of everything that you see going on, right? There's so much that has been orchestrated for a long time, right? And it would be a mistake for people not to regard it, right? To consider it. All I'm saying, right? So he wants to give back the blood money. I don't know, but hey, this is just a little information that I had to share with you today. Prince Easy signing out. Love you. Bye.